Should you spend more to get a newer RTX 5050 in your next gaming laptop, or can you save some money with the older 4060 instead? I've compared both in 25 games at 1080p and 1440p to show you all the differences. The older 4060 laptop GPU has 20% more CUDA, Tensor, and RT cores than the newer 5050. They both have 8 gigs of VRAM with a 128-bit memory bus, but the newer 5050 uses faster GDDR7 memory with more bandwidth. The 4060 has a higher power limit on the spec sheet, but in the real world, we don't see the 4060 to go much above 100 watts in games. So I'd call them both 100 to 115 watt parts. And that's important because more power equals more performance. This graph shows the 3D Mark TimeSpy graphics score from each GPU at different power levels. Performance is quite close when the GPUs are running at 35 to 60 watts, with the 4060 in purple only scoring 1 to 2% higher than the 5050. So performance is much closer together if you're considering these GPUs in a smaller or budget gaming laptop, as those typically have lower power limits. But with both running at 100 watts, the 4060 has a larger 9% lead over the 5050, increasing slightly to an 11% lead with both at 115 watts. Now, I am using two different gaming laptops to do this comparison, as it's all I had access to, so there is a bit of a difference between their coolers. But both laptops run their GPUs at full power, so this still gives us a fair comparison in terms of gaming performance. And gaming laptops with either of these GPUs can actually be quite affordable with the right sale. And if we find them on a good sale, we'll list them on our gaminglaptop.deals website. Save money on your next gaming laptop with that link below. The older RTX 4060 laptop in purple was using more power than the newer 5050 laptop in 6 different games, anywhere from 18 to 24% more power. But the 5050 in red actually wins from a performance per watt perspective. Even if the 4060 is able to produce more FPS, the 5050 gets us more frames per watt of power consumed. Temperatures were very close, with the 4060 in purple generally warmer, but as mentioned, this one isn't a perfectly fair comparison as both laptops have different coolers. But the 5050 was reaching higher clock speeds, which matches what we saw earlier from the spec sheets. These are the power levels being reached for each GPU in these games. The 4060 was using more power in most cases, while the 5050 more often hit its voltage limit and was prevented from going higher. As for the games, let's dive right in, starting with Apex Legends. At max settings, the older 4060 laptop GPU was 13% faster than the newer 5050 laptop GPU, the second biggest difference at this resolution out of all 25 games tested, while 1440p was just 11% faster on the 4060. There was a bigger 25 to 30% boost in 1% lows with the 4060 though, which means fewer dips in performance and a more consistent, stable experience. But then on the other hand, some games like Cyberpunk 2077 saw almost no difference between the two GPUs. The 4060 was only 5% faster at 1080p, which is less than 4 FPS. Not exactly a difference you'd be too likely to notice in a blind test. And then at 1440p, there's no practical, measurable difference. This changes a little with ray tracing and DLSS enabled in favor of the 4060, but we're still talking about minor differences, or at least they look minor, because with the 4060 14% faster than the 5050 at 1440p, this is actually the biggest difference out of all 25 games tested at this resolution. Space Marine 2 is another game that didn't care if it was running on the 5050 or 4060, with no real difference seen at either resolution, and that's pretty much the same for Spider-Man 2, more so at 1080p, while 1440p was only like 3 FPS faster on the 4060. Horizon Forbidden West saw above average differences between the two GPUs, with the 4060 reaching a 10% higher average frame rate compared to the 5050, increasing to a 14% lead at 1440p, which was also the third biggest difference at this resolution out of all games tested. It doesn't look like much, and well, it's not. But the older 4060 is still in the lead. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was similar in terms of average FPS, but for some reason, the 1% lows dipped hard on the 5050 laptop. Both laptops have the same processor running at the same power level and were tested with the exact same kit of RAM, so I can only conclude this difference was due to the GPUs. Microsoft Flight Simulator was similar, with the 5050 laptop seeing a big drop-off in 1% lows at the higher 1440p resolution, despite the average frame rate not being too far behind. This just means the 4060 provided a smoother, more consistent experience, especially at 1440p. But that wasn't always the case. Things flipped around in Hogwarts Legacy, with the 5050 laptop now seeing a higher 1% low at both resolutions, while the 4060 had the win in average FPS. I'm not really sure why, unless this game really prefers the 5050's faster memory, but the results were consistent after triple checking the data over different days. Forza Horizon 5 was the only game where the 5050 was actually reaching a higher average frame rate compared to the 4060. It's only a 4 FPS or 6% win, but winning's winning. Alright, I think you get the idea. Instead of wasting your time individually talking through the rest of the 16 games tested, I'm just going to quickly skip through the rest of the results on screen now, so feel free to pause the video if you want to take a closer look at any specific game. The reason I test so many games is so we can get a much more accurate average result from a wider selection of titles, which allows us to draw a better conclusion. In other words, more data equals more better. Let's take a look at those average differences next. On average, over all 25 games tested, at 1080p, the older RTX 4060 laptop GPU was almost 8% faster compared to the newer RTX 5050 laptop GPU, and then at 1440p, there's a similar near 8% average lead with the 4060. Basically, the 4060 is just faster, and that's easier to see if we take the average frame rates from all 25 games. It doesn't look like much of a gap, but the 4060 simply gives us more FPS. At least when not factoring in features like multi-frame generation, which I'm sure Nvidia will try to convince you that makes the 5050 worth buying. Only the newer RTX 50 series has access to the new multi-frame generation feature, which basically just means that the 5050 can generate more AI frames than the 4060. Both laptops can use frame gen in the 2x mode, where one frame is generated for each real frame. But with multi-frame gen, the 5050 can also use the 3x mode, where 2 frames are generated per one real frame, or the 4x mode, where 3 frames are generated per one real frame. I think frame generation is a useful feature when used correctly, and according to this investigation by Tim from Hardware Unboxed, that includes single-player titles that aren't latency sensitive, with a base frame rate of 70 to 80 FPS prior to generating frames. And we can achieve that with the 5050, though in most cases it's at 1080p, and you might have to turn the settings down. Personally, in supported games, I play with frame generation on, as I prefer the smoother experience. But some of the examples Nvidia are showing are just misleading in my opinion. It's not an apples to apples comparison to compare rasterized frames against AI generated frames and pretend that the two are equal. The AI generated frames won't have the same visual quality and the latency will be worse. The 4060 can still use frame gen in the 2x mode if you really want to generate some frames. I don't think that multi-frame gen makes the 5050 a must-have feature. It's more of a nice extra feature to have if you happen to have it. It's definitely not enough for me to suggest buying it over the better performing 4060, especially once we consider the price difference. Prices of both GPUs will of course change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and to see if there are any current sales. If laptops with either of these GPUs have a good sale, you'll find them on our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include the best sales, so make sure you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop with that link below. Right now in October, 5050 laptops cost more than $1,000 and go up from there, though we have seen some on sale for $800 to $900. Still, that's kinda crazy considering how many 4060 deals we've listed on the deal site, anywhere between $650 and $900. The 4060 wins from a cost per frame game perspective, as it simply gives you more FPS for your dollar. Spending $900 on a 4060 or 5050 laptop, for example, is just better value with the 4060. In most cases, you can spend around $100 more on a 4060 laptop and still get similar value in terms of dollar per FPS. Or put another way, you've got the option of spending less to get more performance with a 4060. So the 5050 came out more than 2 years after the 4060. It costs more money, and it doesn't perform as well in games when not factoring in multi-frame generation. Considering how available the 4060 still is, honestly, I think that's the best pick at the moment, at least until supply runs out and you can't buy it anymore. Hopefully by that point, the 5050 has come down in price. But if you want even more performance, check out this one next to find out if it's worth spending more money on the higher tier 5060. The last thing you want to do when spending hundreds of dollars on a brand new gaming laptop is to buy the wrong thing and get stuck with it for the next few years. And this one will help you make the right decision.